Hello everybody. Today I, Dr. Raktim, presents the topic of the Factory Act 1948. This topic of Factory Act 1948 is often asked in our theory exam. So let us begin with the topic. Coming to the introduction, it was first amendment in the year 1881, way back in the British era. And then several revisions and amendments have taken place. The Factory Act was first implemented formally in the year 1948 after getting independence. And then the amendments which took place was in the year 1976 and the latest amendment was in the year 1987. So what is the purpose of this Factory Act? The Factory Act, it promotes humane industrial environments so that all the workers in the factory or industry or any establishments can work peacefully without harm. This act prioritizes the safety of the workers, their welfare, and upliftment of the environment where they are working, so that a uniform working environment can be established all throughout India. It thus led to fair employment policies and practices in India. So, coming to the scope of this act, firstly, this Factory Act defines what is a factory. A factory, or you may also say it to be an industry. A factory is defined as any establishments having 10 or more workers and where the power is used. Or if there is no power used in the factory and there are 20 or more workers working in that factory. Thus, the establishments have 10 or more workers and power is used, or 20 or more workers where power is not used. This act previously was for only established industries or factories. However, after the current amendment of 1976 and then 87, the perennial and seasonal factories were also included. This is very important. With perennial and seasonal factories, I mean those factories which are established seasonally. Say, as for example, the sugarcane cutting factory, or the in the place of say Gujarat or Maharashtra where sugarcane is there, and after the cultivation season is over, those factories gets shut down, and then in the next year again during the harvesting season, those factories will be re-established. Such kind of factories are known as seasonal factories. Previously, those factories did not come under Factory Act. After the amendments, these were also taken up under the Factory Act. Secondly, all the states and union territories of India um, include this Factory Act, and it is applicable to all the states and union territories. Here I want to mention is that the Jammu and Kashmir, which was previously not under the Factory Act. However, after the Article 370 is abolished, this Factory Act came into implementation there also. So these are the latest developments that have taken place. Yes. Now, coming to health, safety, and welfare. This act provides elaborate provision of health, safety, and welfare of the workers. At first, it gives us guideline for cleanliness, lighting standards, the ventilation. Hmm. Apart from that, this act also gives guidelines for the treatment of the wastes and the effluents coming out from the factory and the proper disposal methods. This act also ensures that safe and wholesome water is being provided to the workers. And in case of summer season, the provision of cool drinking water should also be available for the workers. Lastly, This act also gives guidelines for the urinal and toilet facilities for the workers. Going into depth, let us first discuss about the good health. For good health, we need adequate space, adequate working conditions. Okay. So currently, whenever an establishment is set up and there is workers working out there, this act gives a guideline of minimum space of 500 cubic feet for each worker. It is prescribed in this factory act. And those factories which were set up before this act formally came, just like before 1948, for such factories, this act gives the provision that minimum 350 cubic feet space should be present for a worker. Again, here I would like to mention is the units used is cubic feet. So it is a three-dimensional space, length, breadth, and height. Again, I want to stress on the fact that uh, in case of length, breadth, and height, the height of the establishment should not be more than 14 feet above the ground. The height more than 14 feet will not be considered to calculate the volume of the space for each worker. So, when we calculate this for each worker, the length, breadth, and height, the height should not be more than 14 feet. It should be always less. This 14 feet cutoff, it is used because if such provision was not there, then the building of the factories would be such that it would be always tall. The height more than 14 feet is generally not considered because uh, when we breathe in, the adequacy of air that is needed for adequate breathing or respiration, all such air is always concentrated in the lower part of the room. The air which is present in the high up, more than 14 feet, does not play any role in during respiration. So, to maintain a good working environment and condition, this height of 14 feet has been made cutoff under the Factory Act. Moving forward to the safety, this act also gives provision for the safe use when a new machinery comes. The state government, since health is a state subject, prescribes limit of load that is to be carried by men, women, and children. Under this act, every details have been prescribed and uh, detailed information is given. Thirdly, there should be a safety officer employed for every 1000 or more workers in the factory. I repeat, a safety officer is employed for every 1000 or more workers in the factory. So, when a factory has got 1000 or more workers, then a safety officer must be employed to maintain the safety of all the workers. Moving forward, for the welfare of the workers. For welfare, a canteen is to be provided by the employer for their employees when there is 250 or more workers employed in that factory. Secondly, facility of crèche. Now, what do you mean by crèche? Crèche are those facilities where uh, small children is being taken care of. Suppose a factory has got women and their children must be taken care of by the factory. For them, for their care, a crèche facility must be established by the factory. So, for its provision, the Factory Act suggests that when 30 or more women workers are employed in your factory, then a crèche facility must be present. I repeat again that 30 or more working women are employed in the factory, then a crèche facility must be present in that factory. Previously, this guideline was for 50 or more women. Now it has been reduced to 30 or more women. Lastly, a welfare officer is employed where there are 500 or more workers. A welfare officer is employed when there is 500 or more workers employed in the factory. Again, uh, we must ensure that 500 or more workers, if present in a factory, then a welfare officer must be there. And 1,000 or more workers, if present in the factory, then a safety officer must be there. Okay, so how to remember it? We have to ensure safety of most of our workers. So it is more. More means 1,000. So safety officer is for 1,000 and welfare officer is for 500. Okay, these questions where I have highlighted or underlined, these questions have been coming in our Viva exam, in our MCQ exam. So we must remember these points. Moving forward to the employment of young persons now. This act prohibits the employment of children under 14 years of age. Though WHO says adolescent age group to be 10 to 19 years, under this Factory Act, the adolescents are being considered in the age group of 15 to 18 years under this act. So for 15 to 18 years, whenever they are employed in a factory, they must be having a fitness certificate. That fitness certificate must be issued by a certifying surgeons. That means a surgeon can only give fitness certificate for the adolescents for their employment under Factory Act. Again, I repeat that less than 14 years of age, employment should be prohibited. 15 to 18 years of age, they are considered as adolescents under this act, and their fitness certificate must be issued, and it is issued only by surgeon. So when a fitness certificate is issued by a surgeon, when they are employed in a factory, the work time for these adolescents is only 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. No night shift can be given to these adolescent employees under Section 3. It is important for us to know. Moving forward to the work hours now. As for the work hours, there should be a maximum of 48 working hours per week. It is maximum. It can be less than 48, but it cannot be more than 48 hours per week. Again, we must ensure that it should not exceed 9 hours per day. Thirdly, it is stressed in the Factory Act that there must be a provision of at least half an hour of rest after 5 hours of continuous work for adults. And in case of adolescents, it is at least half hour of rest after 4.5 hours of continuous work. Here, how we will remember. Generally, our work shift starts from 8 a.m. We also go to the class at 8 a.m. So 8 to 9, there is class. 9 to 12, there is practical class for us. 12 to 1, there is again a class for us. At 1 o'clock, we get a break time of 1 hour, isn't it? So it is fulfilled that half hour of rest after 5 hours of continuous work. So we have worked from 8 to 1, that is 5 hours, and we get a break of 1 hour. So here it is given, it is at least half hour. So we get 1 hour of break. At 2 o'clock, we return to our classroom. From 2 to 5, we again have our classes. So 2 to 5, 3 hours. So previously it was 5 hours and then next 3 hours. So 5 plus 3 is 8 hours. So 8 hours of duty we are doing, and I said already that it should not exceed 9 hours. So all three conditions are fulfilled. So when we are doing 8 hours per day, so for 6 days in a week, it is 8 into 6 is 48 hours. So maximum of 48 hours of work we are doing per week, and Sunday is a off. In some institutes where their timing is 8 to 4, Suppose there 8 to 9 is one class, 9 to 12 is another practical class, and 12 to 1 is another class. So we get a 5 hours of work, 1 to 2 is break, and 2 to 4 is again work. So 5 plus 2 is 7. So 7 hours multiplied by 6 days in a week comes out to be 42 hours in a week. So it is again less than 48 hours. So we can remember it like that. In case of adolescents, this at least half hour of rest is given after 4.5 hours of continuous work. This often comes as a MCQ exam for us. So we must remember that. Again, I want to highlight is even if someone is doing overtime, the total working hours, including the overtime, it should not exceed 60 hours in a week. Now coming to the leaves and wages. When a worker working in a industry or a factory has completed 1 year of his work, then that worker is entitled to get some paid leaves. So in case of paid leaves for adults, an adult worker is entitled to get one paid leave after 20 days of continuous work. Similarly, for adolescents or children, in this case, children, I mean 15 to 18 years, they are entitled for one paid leave after 15 days of continuous work. So suppose, think like that, when a worker, when he or she gets one paid leave, and that worker did not use his or her paid leave, then that paid leave will get accumulated. Okay, so when this gets accumulated, it can be accumulated for a maximum of 30 days in case of adults, and in case of children it is for 40 days. Beyond that, no leaves would be accumulated under Factory Act. Okay, okay, moving forward now to the occupational diseases. It is obligatory and mandatory for the management to give information of any accidents or severe bodily injuries or any occupational diseases that have taken place in the past at the time of joining of the worker in that particular factory, so that when the worker gives his or her voluntary consent, then only that employer may hire that worker as an employee. So furnishing these information regarding these accidents and injuries is a must in part of the employer. Otherwise, the employer may be held responsible later. So this Factory Act also gives a schedule for notifiable diseases. Okay. Uh, Please remember that there were 29 notifiable diseases under this act. And in 1987, the latest amendment of the Factory Act have also included silicosis, bagazosis, bicyanosis, uh, noise-induced hearing loss as the other occupational diseases. So, this amendment also provides provision of safety and occupational health surveys, when and how to be done uh, at time to time for the welfare of the workers. The Factory Act has given it in details. Moving forward to the employment on hazardous processes. The new amendment of 1987 also incorporated the Site Appraisal Committee. This Site Appraisal Committee is headed by the Chief Inspector and other members. So altogether, the number of members should not be more than 14. And what is the purpose of this committee? The purpose of this committee is to examine the service conditions of the employees in the factory, including the hazardous environment, that whether the working conditions in the factory is suitable for the workers or not. If they found out to be unsuitable for the workers, then they give provisions to improve the working condition, so that the welfare of the uh, workers is ensured, the safety is ensured, and the uh, employer or the employee may not face uh, the consequences later on. That was all for today's lecture, uh, highlighting this again that this topic often comes as a short note in our theory exam, and all the underlying points in the presentation are um, frequently coming as a MCQ in our exam. Plus, these are also important in for Viva. Thank you very much. If you have any queries, questions, please uh, put them in the comment box. I will be happy to answer you all. Thank you.